How's it going, everyone? Austin Honecker here. I just want to come on here for a while and give them a review for All Elite Wrestling's AEW Dynamite from 2 nights ago, which was October 26th, 2022. I gotta say, it was awesome from start to finish. For the matches, match 1, it was the Blackpool Combat Club, which are Claudio Castagnoli and Wheeler Yuta, versus the Jericho Appreciation Society, which are Chris Jericho and Daniel Garcia. That was a great match, but the ending to it, the Blackpool Combat Club went over cause Claudio Castagnoli pinned Chris Jericho with the neutralizer. Match 2, it was Swerve in Our Glory, which are Keith Lee and Swerve Strickland, versus FTR, which are Dax Harwood and Cash Wheeler, in a number 1 contenders match to determine the number 1 contenders to face the Acclaimed, which are Max Caster and Anthony Bowens, for the AEW Tag Team titles. That was a great match, but the ending to it, Swerve in Our Glory, went over cause Keith Lee pinned Dax Harwood with the Ground Zero. Now after the match, as Swerve in Our Glory, which are Keith Lee and Swerve Strickland, were heading backstage, the Guns, which are Colton and Austin Gunn, attacked FTR, which are Dax Harwood and Cash Wheeler, and beat the shit out of them. And as that was going on, Billy Gunn and the Acclaimed, which are Max Caster and Anthony Bowens, came down to the ring, and the Guns, which are Colton and Austin Gunn, retreated. And so Billy Gunn and the Acclaimed, which are Max Caster and Anthony Bowens, stood tall, and FTR was and FTR, which are Dax Harwood and Cash Wheeler, were looking on and everything. That was cool. That was after the match, by the way. Match 3, it was Bryan Danielson versus Sammy Guevara. That was a great match, but the ending to it, Bryan Danielson went over due to referee stoppage, cause Bryan Danielson knocked Sammy Guevara out with elbow strikes to the head. Match 4, it was Jamie Hayter versus Riho. That was a great match, but the ending to it, Jamie Hayter went over with the ripcord lariat. Now after the match, Team DMD, which are Britt Baker, Rebel, and Jamie Hayter, celebrated Jamie Hayter's victory. As that was going on, Tony Storm came out. As that was going on, Tony Storm came out on stage, and a stare down between Tony Storm and Jamie Hayter ensued, and everything. That was cool. That was after the match, by the way. And match 5, which was the main event, it was Jon Moxley versus Penta El Cerro Miedo for the AEW title. That was a great match, but the ending to it, Jon Moxley went over and retained the AEW title with the Death Rider. Now after the match, as Jon Moxley was celebrating his victory, the Firm, which are Lee Moriarty, Ethan Page, Colton Gunn, Austin Gunn, and W. Morrissey, came through the crowd and entered the ring and beat the shit out of Jon Moxley. And as that was going on, Stokely Hathaway came down to the ring and joined in along with the Firm, which are Lee Moriarty, Ethan Page, Colton Gunn, Austin Gunn, and W. Morrissey. and everything. And as that beatdown of the Firm beating the shit out of Jon Moxley was going on, the camera went backstage, and Alex Marvez was trying to check on the Blackpool Combat Club, which are Bryan Danielson, which are William Regal, Claudio the Blackpool Combat Club, which are William Regal, Bryan Danielson, Claudio Castagnoli, and Wheeler Yuta, but the Blackpool Combat Club's door was chained to where they couldn't get out of their locker room. And then the camera went back into the ring, and as the Firm continued their beatdown on Jon Moxley, MJF came out and was conflicted by it, and MJF ran down to the ring, and MJF as soon as he got into the ring, MJF fired Stokely Hathaway. And after MJF fired Stokely Hathaway, the Firm, which are Stokely Hathaway, Lee Moriarty, Ethan Page, Colton Gunn, Austin Gunn, and W. Morrissey, ganged up on MJF and beat the shit out of him, and everything, and as the Firm were beating down MJF, Ethan Page, after MJF got his ass whooped, after MJF got his ass whooped, Ethan Page executed the Ego's Edge on MJF, and then W. Morrissey ended up executing the choke slam to MJF through a table outside the ring. And while Jon Moxley was already laid out from the beatdown he got, and then MJF ended up being laid out as well. And so the Firm, which are Stokely Hathaway, Lee Moriarty, Ethan Page, Colton Gunn, Austin Gunn, and W. Morrissey stood tall and everything. That was cool. That was after the match, by the way, and that was match 5 in the main event, by the way. Now, besides the matches, Renee Paquette interviewed Bryan Danielson. Well, Renee Paquette brought up about Bryan Danielson losing to Chris Jericho and everything, and talked about how Wheeler Yuta, and brought up about what Wheeler Yuta said to Bryan Danielson last week and everything as well. Well, Bryan Danielson was talking about how he was hurt, he was frustrated losing to Chris Jericho. He was frustrated because Daniel Garcia turned his back on him, and he was frustrated because Wheeler Yuta talking back to him and everything. And Bryan Danielson ended up talking about, and then Bryan Danielson was talking about how he's going to take out all of his frustrations on Sammy Guevara. And Bryan Danielson talked about how he didn't have a problem with Sammy Guevara. He just don't like his smug face and his internet vlogs and everything. And as Bryan Danielson continued to talk, Wheeler Yuta came along, and Wheeler Yuta started talking shit towards Bryan Danielson, and then Bryan Danielson and Wheeler Yuta ended up getting into it, arguing and bickering back and forth. And as that was going on, William Regal and Claudio Castagnoli went to intervene. Well, Claudio Castagnoli was saying, "All right, stop, you two. There's no sense in this bullcrap. We are a team. We work together. So, enough with this. We're going to sit down and we're going to talk this out like adults and everything." That was cool. AEW aired a vignette of the Elite, which are Kenny Omega, Matt Jackson, and Nick Jackson being dissolved and everything. That was cool. Tony Schiavone interviewed the Jericho Appreciation Society, which are Chris Jericho, Jake Hager, Sammy Guevara, Daniel Garcia, Matt Menard, Angelo Parker, Anna Jay, and Ty Mello. Well, Tony Schiavone brought up to Chris Jericho. Tony Schiavone brought up about Chris Jericho, about the Jericho Appreciation Society losing to the Blackpool Combat Club and everything, and Matt Menard aired his frustration and everything, and then Daniel Garcia was talking about how the Blackpool Combat Club make him sick and everything, and Sammy Guevara was talking about how he was going to kick Bryan Danielson's ass and everything, and then Chris Jericho was talking about how Claudio Castagnoli cheated and everything, and talked about how he was going to bury Ring of Honor, and that he was going to be challenging every Ring of Honor champion from here on out to step up to him for the Ring of Honor World title and everything. That was cool. Renee Paquette interviewed Saraya. Well, Renee Paquette was talking about how it was going to be great working with her girl Saraya again, and Saraya was talking about how she was excited to work with Renee Paquette again as well. And as Renee Paquette and Saraya were talking, Britt Baker came along and started talking shit, and then Saraya and Britt Baker ended up bickering back and forth, and Renee Paquette intervened and said, "All right, you two, since you all want to sit there and bicker and fight, how about you all take it somewhere else and fight it out and everything." And then Britt Baker ended up leaving, and Saraya and Renee Paquette looked on and everything. That was cool. Renee Paquette interviewed MJF. Well, Renee Paquette introduced MJF. Well, MJF came out, and MJF was talking about how on November 19th at Full Gear, he was going to be taking on Jon Moxley for the AEW title, and talked about how he wants Jon Moxley at 100%, either him or Pena Sarah Miedo at 100% at Full Gear and everything, and talked about how he was going to be the next AEW champion and everything, and talked about how Jon Moxley was mid and everything, and MJF was talking about how William Regal was mid and everything as well, and MJF was going on and on talking shit, and as MJF was talking, Stokely Hathaway came out and talked about how he wasn't going to get involved and beat down whoever MJF has to face at Full Gear for the AEW title and everything, and MJF ended up getting on the microphone and told Stokely Hathaway that if the firm gets involved and takes out Jon Moxley or Pena El Cerro Miedo, then the firm would be fired. So Stokely Hathaway ended up going backstage, and MJF, and so MJF ended up talking more shit and everything. That was cool. Oh yeah. Oh shit. Oh yeah. Excuse me. AEW aired a vignette of the build-up of the match between Wardlow versus Matt Taven for the AEW TNT title. for AEW Rampage. That was cool. Yeah, that was cool, by the way. Let me see. Renee Paquette interviewed Ray Phoenix and Alex Abrahantes. Well, Renee Paquette brought up about the Death Triangle, which are Pac, Ray Phoenix, Penn El Ser. Well, Renee Paquette brought up about the Death Triangle, which are Pac, Ray Phoenix, and Penn El Miedo being the trios champs, and talked about how they wanted double gold and everything. And Renee Paquette was asking Ray Phoenix who she thought was going to win between Jon Moxley versus Penn El Miedo for the AEW title. Well, Ray Phoenix was talking about how his brother Penn El Miedo was going to win the AEW title, and they were going to be they were going to be a double champion and everything. And Alex Abrahantes was talking about how he was how Penn El Miedo was going to be beating Jon Moxley for the AEW title and everything as well. And then Alex Abrahantes brought up about Ray Phoenix needing to be the AEW All-Atlantic champion and everything. And as that was going on, Christian Cage and Luchasaurus So as that was going on, Christian Cage and Luchasaurus came along, and Christian Cage was talking about how Ray Phoenix needed to go to the back of the line because he vowed that Luchasaurus was going to be going after every champion in AEW and everything. And as Christian Cage continued to talk more shit, Orange Cassidy came along, and Orange Cassidy was saying, "You all talking about me? You all talking about this AEW All-Atlantic title? Well, next week, let's go at it for it." And everything. That was cool. Renee Paquette interviewed Eddie Kingston. Well, Renee Paquette brought up about Eddie Kingston having temper issues and how he was doing and everything, and asked Eddie Kingston who he thought was going to win between Jon Moxley versus Penn El Miedo for the AEW title. Eddie Kingston was talking about how he was doing great and how his smile was like Colgate toothpaste and everything, and talked about how he loved both Jon Moxley and Penn El Miedo because they were both his best friends, but he predicted Jon Moxley to go over at Penn El Miedo and retain the AEW title. And Eddie Kingston was talking about how he's doing okay, and how he don't want his friends to worry about him and everything, and talked about how he wanted people to leave him alone and everything. That was cool. That was cool. Darby Allin cut a promo talking about how the reason why Sting hasn't been on AEW TV in a while is because he's had a talk with Sting about not being happy where he's at, not being happy about where he's going and everything, and talked about giving up and everything, and Sting talked him out of giving up and talked about how if it wasn't for Darby Allin, he wouldn't have came out of retirement, and he thanked Darby Allin for bringing him out of retirement and everything, and Darby Allin was saying, "Well, why don't you let me prove myself to myself?" And Jay Lethal whoever your friend is that knows me, if they want to know my weakness, I'm my own weakness and everything. And Jay Lethal, Sanjay Dutt, and Satnam Singh cut a promo, and Jay Lethal was saying, Darby, 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 you need to worry less about my friend and worry more about yourself. Because what we did to you last week will do worse and everything. And then Sanjay Dutt was talking about how Darby Allin pissed him off and how Darby Allin doesn't want to piss him off and everything. And Jay Lethal ended up talking about how he was going to kick Darby Allin's ass next week and everything as well. And Sanjay Dutt kept talking shit before that, but then after Jay Lethal said what he said, it was over and everything. That was cool. Now, besides all that, Tony Schiavone, Taz, and Excalibur done commentary throughout the whole show. They done awesome as usual. And William Regal done guest commentary along with Tony Schiavone, Taz, and Excalibur during the matches of the Blackpool Combat Club versus the Jericho Appreciation Society and Bryan Danielson versus Sammy Guevara. William Regal done great on guest commentary. The referees for the event were Rick Knox, Paul Turner, Bryce Remsburg, Stephon Smith, and Aubrey Edwards. Okay. Aubrey Edwards refereed the match between the Blackpool Combat Club versus the Jericho Appreciation Society. Stephon Smith refereed the match between Swerve in Our Glory versus FTR. Bryce Remsburg refereed the match between Bryan Danielson versus Sammy Guevara. Rick Knox refereed the match between Jamie Hayter versus Riho, and Paul Turner refereed the match between Jon Moxley versus Pena El Cerro Miedo for the AEW title. All the referees done awesome as usual. So the match card for All Elite Wrestling's AEW Dynamite Wednesday night looks like it's going to be awesome. So the match card for All Elite Wrestling's AEW Dynamite Wednesday night, it's going to be Orange Cassidy versus Rey Fenix versus Luchasaurus in a three-way match for the AEW All-Atlantic title. Chris Jericho versus a former Ring of Honor champion for the Ring of Honor World title. Let me see. So the match card for All Elite Wrestling's AEW Dynamite Wednesday night, it's going to be Orange Cassidy versus Rey Fenix versus Luchasaurus for the AEW All-Atlantic title. Chris Jericho versus a former Ring of Honor champion for the Ring of Honor World title. And Jay Lethal versus Darby Allin. So the match card that's the matches so far. Now besides the matches, Billy Gunn will be having a birthday bash, and Renee Paquette will be doing a sit-down interview with Saraya and Britt Baker. So the match card for All Elite Wrestling's AEW Dynamite Wednesday night that's been announced so far looks like it's going to be awesome. I can't wait to see it, and I'm looking forward to it. And the match card for All Elite Wrestling's AEW Rampage tonight, it's going to be Wardlow versus Matt Taven for the AEW TNT title. The Blackpool, and the match card and the match card for All Elite Wrestling's AEW Rampage tonight, it's going to be Wardlow versus Matt Taven for the AEW TNT title. The Blackpool Combat Club, which are Claudio Castagnoli and Wheeler Yuta, versus the Jericho Appreciation Society, which are Matt Menard and Angelo Parker, and Madison Rayne versus Ty Mello. So the match card for All Elite Wrestling's AEW Rampage tonight looks like it's going to be awesome. I can't wait to see it, and I'm looking forward to it. But anyway, I just wanted to come on here for a while and give them a review for All Elite Wrestling's AEW Dynamite from 2 nights ago, which was October 26th, 2022. Like I said, it was awesome from start to finish. And with that being said, my name is Austin Honecker, and I will catch your fucking ass down the goddamn road. Peace out.